My brother tried to steal my girlfriend at Christmas. Years later, my parents called me the worst son, but when he extorted them for $45K and vanished. Now they're begging for forgiveness because I'm becoming a father. I'm 30 years old. I work in cybersecurity, so basically I'm a hacker, but one of the good ones. The kind that companies hire to find vulnerabilities before the bad guys find them. And I need to tell this story because what happened with my family over the last 3 years still has me processing everything. My wife Lily says that writing this down or talking about it will help me. And honestly, she's right. I need to get it all out because what happened is crazy. I guess I should start from the beginning, when things were still normal, or at least what I considered normal at that time. I grew up in a pretty traditional family, mom, dad, and my younger brother Cameron, who's 4 years younger than me. My parents had been married for like 32 years at that point, super stable. My dad worked at a medium-sized logistics company where he'd climbed up to an important management position, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. Cameron and I always had a decent relationship, like normal brothers. We fought as kids over stupid stuff, but nothing serious, and when we grew up, each of us went our own way. I went the technical route, studied computer science, specialized in security, and he studied business administration. I think, although he never actually finished the degree if I'm being honest, he was always more of the social type, charismatic, knew how to make people like him, but there was something about him that never quite sat right with me, though at the time I couldn't have told you exactly what it was. I met Lily when I was like 25. We worked at the same company, her in human resources and me in the IT department, and it was love at first sight. Sounds cheesy, but that's how it was. We became a couple after like 6 months of flirting at the office. Those glances in the cafeteria, the casual messages that aren't so casual, and eventually we went out and everything flowed perfectly. Lily is incredible, smart, funny, super considerate, and my parents loved her from the beginning. Cameron also seemed to get along well with her, or so I thought. He was always friendly when we saw each other at family gatherings, made jokes, asked about her work, all very normal and appropriate. Fast forward to 3 years ago, December to be exact. My parents organized the typical Christmas party at their house. The annual event where all the family comes, the aunts and uncles, the cousins, some of my parents' close friends, the big thing. Lily and I had been dating for like 2.5 years at that point. We were already talking about getting married, although there wasn't a formal proposal yet, and everything was going perfectly in our relationship. Cameron had come to the party alone. He'd just broken up with his girlfriend at the time. I don't even remember what her name was, because he changed them every 6 months, basically, and I didn't pay much attention to that. It was his life and his problem. The party was going. Normally. Food, drinks, Christmas music in the background. My aunts and uncles telling the same stories as always. You know how these things are. I was in the kitchen helping my mom with I don't know what. I think we were getting more ice or something. And Lily had stayed in the living room chatting with my cousin Andrea. When I came back like 15 minutes later, I saw Cameron sitting next to Lily on the couch. Super close, like invasively close, and he had his hand on the back of the couch behind her. Lily looked uncomfortable. I noticed it immediately because I know her well. She had that tense smile she gets when she's trying to be polite, but really wants to run away from a situation. I walked over and heard part of what Cameron was saying, and I couldn't believe it. He was telling her something about how she deserved to be with someone more adventurous, that I was too boring with my office job, that he could show her how to really have fun. And the worst part, what made me explode, was when he put his hand on Lily's knee and said, and I remember this verbatim because it's burned into my brain, "You realize you're with the wrong brother, right?" In that moment, something inside me broke. I felt like they'd thrown ice water down my back, and at the same time my chest was hot with the fury rising in me. Lily stood up immediately, pushed Cameron's hand off her, and looked at me with those help me eyes, and I was already walking toward them. I said to Cameron, literally said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he had the nerve to smile like it was all a joke. And he said something like, "Relax, bro. We were just talking. But I'm not stupid." I'd heard everything. I'd seen everything. And I told him to get out of my sight before I did something I'd regret. Cameron stood up, still with that little smile that made me want to wipe it off his face. and told me it was my fault for leaving my girlfriend alone, that if I couldn't take care of what I had, I shouldn't be surprised if someone else tried. I don't remember exactly what happened next. Honestly, it was all very fast. But I know I pushed him, he pushed me back, and within seconds, we were wrestling in the middle of the living room while the whole family watched, horrified. My dad and two of my uncles separated us. My mom was screaming, Lily was crying, and the whole party turned into a total disaster. Cameron kept saying I was overreacting, that he was just being friendly. But when my dad asked him directly what exactly he'd said, Cameron went quiet. And right there, my dad knew something serious had happened. Lily and I left the party immediately. She was shaking in the car. She told me everything Cameron had been saying to her during those 15 minutes. Really disgusting things about how she and he would have better chemistry, about how I was boring and only thought about computers, that he could give her a more exciting life. I felt betrayed on a level I can't even explain. I mean, he's my brother, my own brother, trying to steal my girlfriend, and on top of that doing it in the most brazen way possible at our parents' house during Christmas. Who does that? You know what I mean? It wasn't just that he found her attractive or something like that. It was actively trying to sabotage my relationship, and that's what hurt me the most. That night, I made a decision. Cameron no longer existed for me. I sent him a message saying I never wanted to see him or talk to him again, that what he'd done was unforgivable, and that expecting us to get along after that was impossible. He responded with a super condescending message, saying I was being dramatic, that I needed to grow up and get over my insecurities, basically blaming me for the whole situation. I blocked his number after that. My parents called me the next day. They wanted to talk about what had happened. I went alone to their house. Lily didn't want to see anyone in my family at that moment, and I understood her perfectly. My dad and mom were serious. They told me they'd talked to Cameron, that he'd admitted he went too far with his comments, but insisted I'd overreacted. I told them everything, every detail of what Lily had told me, Cameron said to her, and I saw how my mom's face got paler and paler. My dad was furious. I could see it in how he clenched his jaw, and they told me they understood my decision to cut contact with Cameron, that what he'd done was wrong, and that they supported me completely. For the next several months, the family basically divided. Cameron stopped going to family gatherings for a while. My parents stopped inviting him because they knew I wasn't going to be there if he was, and everyone knew something serious had happened, although my parents didn't give details to anyone else. Lily and I got engaged like 6 months after that. We got married a year later, and it was honestly the happiest time of my life. I'd managed to remove my toxic brother from my life. I had an incredible wife, my career was going well, and my parents were still super supportive. But then, like a year and a half after the incident, Cameron sent a letter to my parents. A long letter apologizing, saying he'd been in therapy, that he'd reflected on his actions, that he understood what he did was wrong, and that he wanted to repair his relationship with them. Keynote: he never apologized to me or Lily, only to my parents. They called me to tell me, to ask what I thought, and I was super clear. I told them Cameron could have whatever relationship he wanted with them, but that as long as he didn't apologize to me and Lily genuinely, I had no interest in reconnecting with him. My parents said they understood, that they were going to talk to Cameron about that. Turns out Cameron never apologized to us, but my parents started seeing him again anyway. They told me, they were honest about it, and I told them it was okay, that I understood he was their son too and I wasn't going to ask them to cut him out of their lives, but that it meant I wasn't going to be at events where he was. It worked for a while, like a year or so. They saw Cameron on their side, saw Lily and me on ours, never mixed things, and although it wasn't ideal, it was manageable. Everything went to hell like 10 months ago. My parents were going to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The big thing, you know? They'd rented a small hall. We're going to invite family and friends. And my mom called me like 2 months before to confirm we were going. Of course, I told her, and I started planning what to give them. Lily was looking at dress options, everything normal. But 2 weeks before the event, my cousin Andrea sent me a message asking if I knew Cameron was also going. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I called my mom immediately and asked her if it was true. There was a long silence, too long, and then she admitted yes, that they'd invited Cameron, that he was their son too and they couldn't not invite him to their anniversary. I explained to them, again, that I wasn't going to be in the same place as Cameron, that nothing had changed, that he'd never apologized to us, and that it was unbelievable they thought this was going to be okay. My mom started crying, saying she didn't want either of her sons to miss their anniversary, that it had been almost 3 years and we needed to get over it, that Cameron had changed. I gave them an ultimatum, which I never thought I'd do with my own parents. I told them, either he goes or I go. You decide. I honestly thought they were going to choose me. I mean, I hadn't done anything wrong. I was the one who'd been betrayed, and I'd kept my distance respectfully without causing drama. My dad was the one who spoke. His voice sounded tired, and he told me they'd thought a lot about this, that they understood my position, but that Cameron was younger, had made a mistake when he was immature, and that, basically, I needed to be the older brother and forgive. I asked him directly. So you're telling me you'd rather have Cameron go and not me? And there was another silence. And finally my dad said, we think you're mature enough to understand that sometimes you have to let go of resentment. Cameron needs you. He's the better son in that sense. He knows when to let things go. He called Cameron the better son. The guy who tried to steal my girlfriend, who never apologized, who basically caused this whole mess. I felt like I'd been hollowed out inside, like all the air left my lungs. I told them, okay, enjoy your party, and hung up. Lily was crying when I told her, not for herself, but for me, because she knew how much this hurt me. I blocked my parents' numbers, their emails, everything. If they wanted Cameron in their lives more than me, they could have him. I was done fighting for a place in my own family. The party was on a Saturday. Sunday morning, super early, like 6 a.m., I get like 15 missed calls from my mom, from my dad, from numbers I didn't recognize but then realized were from aunts and uncles. I didn't answer any of them. I was still too angry. Finally, like at 9 a.m., my dad managed to send me a message from someone else's phone saying it was an emergency, that they needed to talk to me urgently, to please answer. I thought someone had died or something, so I called. My dad answered and was in total panic, talking super fast. And he told me that Cameron had gone into his home office during the party and stolen important company documents, confidential contracts, client information, business strategies, basically a bunch of stuff that if it fell into the wrong hands could ruin my dad's company and cause him massive legal problems. He asked me, basically begged me, to use my skills to track Cameron down, to hack his computer or his phone or whatever was necessary to find the documents and recover them before he did something with them. And here comes the part where maybe I was an asshole. I don't know, Lily says. I did the right thing, but sometimes I wonder if I let my anger get the best of me. I told my dad, no, I'm not going to do that. Number 1, because it's illegal and I could get in huge trouble. Number 2, because you chose the better son. Let him help you solve this. My dad started yelling, saying how could I be so vindictive, that it was his career, his reputation, that the company could go bankrupt. And I just responded, you should have thought about that before choosing him over me, and hung up. My mom sent me like 50 emails that day, long ones, full of apologies, saying to please help them. I didn't respond to any of them. Lily asked me if I was sure about my decision, if I wasn't going to regret it, and I told her yes, I was sure, that my parents needed to understand that actions have consequences, that they couldn't treat me like garbage and then expect me to save them when their favorite son betrayed them. Like 3 days after that. Turns out Cameron contacted my parents with his whole plan. He hadn't stolen the documents on impulse or out of anger. It had been totally premeditated. He sent them an email from an anonymous account saying he had all the documents, that he knew exactly what to do with them, that he had contacts with competitors who would pay well for that information, and that if my parents wanted the documents back, they had to pay him. The amount was ridiculous, like $50,000. My brother, the supposed better son, was extorting our own father. The irony was so brutal, I almost laughed when I found out. My parents sent me another desperate email, attaching Cameron's extortion message, imploring me to do something. This time I did respond. A short email that said something like, Looks like the better son isn't so good after all. I hope it was worth what you paid by choosing him. Cruel, yes. But at that moment, I felt they completely deserved it. They'd ignored my pain. They'd minimized what Cameron had done to me. They'd called him the better son. And now they were paying the price for supporting the wrong person. I don't know exactly what happened after in terms of details, but from what I learned later from my cousin Andrea, who kept in touch with me, my parents ended up paying the ransom because they had no choice. The deadline Cameron gave them was very short, and there was no time for anything else. They hired a lawyer to look at legal options, filed a report with the police, although Cameron had been smart enough to cover himself well, and basically had to swallow the fact that their son had robbed and extorted them. Cameron disappeared after receiving the money. Nobody knew where he was, and from what I understood, my parents changed all the locks in the house, put in new security systems, and hired someone to better protect the company documents. Like 2 weeks after all that drama, I received an email from my parents, this time different. It was a real apology. Without excuses, without attempts to justify their decisions, they admitted they'd been terribly wrong, that they'd ignored my feelings, that they'd minimized what Cameron had done, thinking that with time everything would fix itself, and that calling him the better son had been the most hurtful thing they could have said to me. They said they understood if I never forgave them, but that they wanted me to know they were deeply sorry and wished they could turn back time. I saved the email but didn't respond. I needed time, and Lily supported me in that, told me there was no rush, that I had every right to take the space I needed. I continued with my life, work, friends, my marriage, and honestly, I was okay without them. Not okay, okay. Like I missed my parents. I missed those Sunday dinners. I missed being able to call my mom when I needed advice. But there was peace too, you know? Peace in not having to deal with constant drama. Fast forward to like 2 months ago. Lily and I had been trying to have a baby for a while, and it finally happened. She was pregnant. We were super excited, nervous, all the mix of emotions that comes with knowing your life is going to change completely. We decided to announce it on social media when Lily was like 3 months along. You know, we waited until the risky first trimester passed, and we posted that typical picture with the baby shoes and the ultrasound. The response was incredible. Friends, colleagues, distant relatives, everyone congratulating us. And then, like the next day, I got a message from my mom. She'd found my new number through I don't know who. Or maybe I never blocked it on her phone. I don't know. The message said something like, "I saw your announcement. Congratulations to you and Lily. You're going to be wonderful parents. And if you ever want to talk, we want to be in our grandchild's life. If you'll allow us, we love you." Lily and I talked a lot about what to do. On one hand, I was still hurt, still angry about everything that had happened. On the other hand, we were going to have a baby, and that baby deserved to have grandparents if possible, deserved to have a bigger family. Lily told me she'd support me in whatever I decided, that if I wanted to keep them out, she'd understand, but that if I wanted to give them a chance, she'd understand that too. I told her I needed to think about it. After like a week, I decided to respond. I sent them a message saying we were willing to talk, but that I had conditions. Number 1, Cameron couldn't be involved at all. If they saw him, that was their problem, but we didn't want to know anything about him. Number 2, they had to respect our boundaries and not pressure us about reconciliation. And number 3, this was going to be slow. They weren't going to get back the relationship we had overnight. They responded immediately, accepting all the conditions, saying they understood perfectly and just wanted a chance. We met like 2 weeks later at a neutral cafe, not at their house or ours. It was awkward at first. You know, 3 years of not seeing each other, everything that had happened floating in the air. But we talked, really talked, about everything, about the pain, the betrayal, the wrong decisions. My dad cried. I'd never seen him cry like that. He told me it had been the worst mistake of his life to choose appeasing Cameron over protecting me, that he'd lost 3 years with his son and daughter-in-law out of fear of causing more division in the family, and that in the end, he'd lost both sons anyway, one by choice, and the other through his own criminal actions. I'm not going to lie and say everything was solved in that conversation, because it wasn't. But it was a start, I guess. Lily spoke too. Told them how difficult this had all been for her. How she'd hated seeing the pain they caused me, but that she was willing to try for our baby's sake. We agreed to see each other once a month for now, dinners, or lunches, slowly building something new. 2 weeks ago, my mom came to our house for the first time, helped Lily organize some things in the baby's room, and it was almost normal, almost like before. There are still awkward moments, there are still things we don't talk about, and there's definitely a barrier that didn't exist before. But we're trying, and that's something, I think. About Cameron, I don't know anything. My parents don't mention him and I don't ask. As far as I know, he's still disappeared. Maybe he spent the money he extorted. Maybe he's in another country. Honestly, I don't care. That part of my life is closed and I have no intention of reopening it ever. The baby's going to be born in like 4 months. It's a boy. We haven't decided on a name yet, but we're between some we like. Sometimes I think about everything that happened and wonder if I could have handled things differently, if I was too hard on my parents. But then I remember how I felt when they chose Cameron, when they called him the better son. And I know I needed to maintain my boundaries. Maybe in the end, this was what had to happen for my parents to really understand the consequences of their actions. I don't know, Lily says. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom to wake up. What I do know is that this baby is going to grow up knowing he has parents who love him, and if he's lucky, grandparents who learned from their mistakes and are going to be there for him. And that, in the end, is what matters most.